What's it like being the youngest woman ever elected to Congress?
It's very exciting. It's a humbling feeling, and I'm just excited to add an additional crack to the glass ceiling.
Elise Stefanik made her crack in the glass ceiling in a district known as the North Country in New York State. She launched her campaign at age 29 and won it as a 30-year-old.
The faces have indeed changed inside the Beltway, decidedly more female in both houses. And as the new Congress settles and gets ready to get down to business, there are those wondering what this new crop of female lawmakers will mean to America, and if we can finally bury all this talk of a so-called war on women. Welcome to MidPoint, Executive Director of the Independent Women's Forum, Sabrina Schaeffer. Sabrina, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Sabrina, I just mentioned that phrase, and before we start talking about some of the new members of the 114th Congress, I need to ask, when you hear that phrase, war on women, does that still chafe at you and kind of just get the dander up just a little bit more?
Well, look, I am so glad that the American people voted that down. I mean, was definitive. Did the gender gap close altogether? No, but the Americans said enough is enough. We are tired of being pitted against one another. People wanted, substantive policy discussions, and I think this was the first step towards saying that we're done with this war on women rhetoric.
Why did it take us so long to get past that rhetoric? Because it seems as if we have been on this equality march for quite some time, and women do a better job than men in a whole lot of businesses. So what is it that keeps this driving?
Well, look, a big part of it is that we weren't effectively communicating with women consistently on the right. I mean, look, the left has spent more than a decade investing millions of dollars in sophisticated social science research. They have figured out the very best ways of addressing women of all different ages, and they have really sort of cornered this market, so to speak. I think that conservatives and Republicans, by extension, have done a good job this time, but this is a fragile victory. There is still a lot of work to be done if we want to sustain this.
Is it not fair to say, and again, leaning on what you just said here, that to some members of the conservative side, the Republicans, that in the last 10, 15 years, there has still been a good old boy arrogance when it comes to women, let's be honest.
Right. Well, politics, look, it's still overrepresented by men on both sides of the aisle. But I think I actually differ from what Elise Stefanik said. I think it's more than a crack in the glass ceiling. I think the glass ceiling has been shattered. There's a whole slew of wonderful, fiscally conservative women who come from all sorts of different backgrounds and diversity, who have different professional and domestic experience. I think we have a wonderful group of women out there who can serve as ambassadors for limited government and liberty to an otherwise uninformed public on a lot of these issues. So I think that we have a lot of wonderful people. It's going to take time for things to change further, but we've taken a big step forward.
But if indeed, again, I want to take your own phrase where you said that this shatters the glass ceiling, then why, if then it's been shattered so well, are you still talking about a tentative or a very cautious victory?
Well, I think that we have to there's a difference between, are we looking for parity in Congress? Are we looking for equality? I think that we have equality of opportunity to run for office. I think that we found in study after study that people will vote for women as much as they will vote for men. So I think that we have to sort of be careful that we don't look for 50-50 as a goalpost. And too often the women's groups on the left keep changing the goalpost. No longer is it sufficient that we have a lot of great women in office. We simply don't have enough in their view. So I'm much more concerned that the women voters are choosing limited government and liberty, and that they're looking for lawmakers who are going to represent them on those policies when it comes to energy and healthcare and education and growing this economy. That's what I think is where we should be focusing our attention, and we still have a lot of work to do. 1
minute before we take a break here, but let me ask, when you talk about the left, in your opinion, how much damage has the left done, and how long is it going to take to repair the damage the left has done when it comes down to seeking these moving goalposts?
Well, they've done a lot of damage, and the reality is when it comes to talking to women voters, I think that we were very lucky in November, and that a lot more work was done to try to address women voters. But like I said, this is a fragile victory. If we stop now and think that our work is over, then we're going to see this reverse itself. But if this is going to be a sustained victory, if we're going to see this for lasting change, where women begin to value individual choices and they see government as intruding on the economy rather than helping the economy, then we have to continue figuring out, how do you talk to women, what messages work, work, what tactics work in the field. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of research. That's a lot of time that we still need to invest.
All right, speaking of time, let's go ahead. We'll get down to what the Congress is going to have planned here in this session. Please stand by just a couple of minutes. We'll break and then we're back. More talk about the new Congress, the all-important and very critical agenda, and perhaps some things that ladies and gentlemen can agree upon need to be shuttled to the back and face more important matters. Because let's face it, now that the midterms are over, now that a new year has begun, now that our new Congress is in session, there are certain things maybe that need to be changed, a shifting, if you will, to actually get some substantive issues taken care of. That and so much more when we continue right here, where we question everything. This is MidPoint. Welcome back to MidPoint. Executive Director of the Independent Women's Forum, Sabrina Schaeffer, joins us once again as we look forward to Congress now and an entirely new batch of people getting involved. I did want to ask you this, though. A record 107 women will now serve in Congress, but there are those who say, wait a minute, that's really nothing to get that excited about, because in November there were 99 voting female members of Congress. Now there's 104. As a matter of fact, Politico called that a pretty paltry gain. Are you insulted by that?
You know, I'm not. Look, what I'm mostly concerned about is that we have lawmakers, both men and women, who are going to stand for the right principles when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to energy, education, growing this economy. I'm less concerned about their gender. Of course, it's wonderful when we see that women are achieving and they are choosing to run for public office. I think that's a great thing, but it's not for everybody. And I don't want us to get so caught up in reaching parity that we forget that women and men are going to make different choices. And what's most important is that we have policies that are effective for the country.
All right, now let's look at the women there. At least 3 Republican women who some would want to say can become leaders here, truly. Now, are you ready? Heard from Elise Stefanik a little bit earlier. We saw some pictures of Mia Love, the Republican from Utah. Then there's Joni Ernst from Iowa. I don't know why, but anybody who talks about hog castration might actually be somebody who can get right out in front and lead, simply because of all the attention that she got early on in the primaries and in the midterm elections. Is she the one that you look at and say, that can be a real leader?
Well, there is a lot of attention. And, you know, one of the things that probably makes her stand out as a potential leader is that she gets people on the other side a little bit upset, right? You know that somebody is principled when the other side begins to start mumbling about her. And I think that's exactly the case with Joni Ernst. She's someone who stands by her principles. People know that, you know, what she believes in and that she's not going to hold back. So I think she's someone to definitely keep our eye on.
Okay, now, but somebody like that and a Joni Ernst, how then, in your opinion, do they become leaders and get right out in front of issues without some people, the sexist side, will then come up and say, well, it's just a meddling female. Look, I know I'm talking about 60s and 70s stuff, but you know that there are people out there who still to this day in the 21st century will think that.
Well, look, I mean, if sexism remains in this country, it is in politics. It's very often, you are correct, sometimes sort of an old man's club. I joke that the cobblestone streets up on Capitol Hill are a woman's worst friend. So, yes, it's not perfect here in Washington, but I think we have come a long way. Let's not forget that Congresswoman McMorris Rodgers has been in the leadership. We've had lots of wonderful women in administrations and across Congress. So I don't think that we're in the 40s and 50s and 60s. I think that we have come, you know, beyond that. And the best way to prove your skills as a leader is to come up with promising legislation, is to push back on the kind of big government policies for the workplace or for healthcare that the Democrats are going to put forward as good for women. Things like the minimum wage, things like the Paycheck Fairness Act, things like the Family Act. These would be debilitating to the economy. They would backfire on women. And a strong leader is one who's going to come up with a positive alternative.
Okay, then, Sabrina, about a minute or so left here. What is that one thing, that number one thing that the women need to take the lead on in the 114th Congress and make sure that it gets through right away? Power.
I think energy policy, energy. Look, my husband and I both work, but I still oversee the bills in this house. I know what a gallon of milk costs at every supermarket in the area. I take care of our electricity bills. I'm paying all of that. I'm paying attention to all of that. I know what it costs to fill up my car when I drive my kids around. This is an issue that should be quintessentially a woman's issue. And I think if Republicans, and especially Republican women, can own that, that will take them very far.
30 seconds left. What does it say about the Republican Party with people such as Elise Stefanik and Mia Love now serving in Congress?
Well, look, it absolutely helps to break down that stereotype that Republicans are made up of older white men. I think it's fantastic that we're seeing people of different backgrounds and races and religious and different ethnicities. All of this is good. It brings something new to the table. Most importantly is that all of these women believe that less government will help this country move forward, and that's something I'm really excited about.
All right, maybe the good old boy club will indeed be changing for the 21st century and beyond. There you go. Sabrina Schaeffer, we thank you so much for your time. We'll look forward to the next time.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
All right, take care. Next up, what happened at the offices of Charlie Hebdo in Paris was their own fault. As a matter of fact, they're the ones that went out and cultivated the attack on their offices. In essence, that's the opinion of our next guest. As we question everything, MidPoint continues. Stay with us.